Hello and welcome to the Con Couple. I'm Richard,
I'm too tired to mess up the intro.
and we go to a frankly terrifying number of cons every year. But we're not actually at a con this week for, well, one, you couldn't find any this week.
Oh, I found some. It's just we had other stuff to do.
Specifically, if we sound a little sleep deprived, that's because we're both sleep deprived. Our University Gaming Society decided that this would be an excellent week to do a 24-hour gaming marathon for charity, and we got roped in as... I'm concerned that they roped us in as responsible adults, to be fair.
So yeah, we've been up for 24-ish hours. They raised money for charity, right?
Oh yeah, they did.
Cool.
I got a 2-hour nap in while they were doing Magic the Gathering, so we're good.
So we were actually not in our car for once. Also, my name is Caroline. I don't think I actually said that.
You didn't.
It's fine.
So, today we're actually doing something that we've been wanting to do for quite a while, but the organisation and the time to do it hadn't really been there. So we actually have a special guest on the podcast, because we have been meaning to get some interviews with people who are involved in cons going, and so this is going to be the first in, hopefully, a semi-occasional, semi-regular series of this. So please welcome to the podcast, Michael Ross, the owner and operator of Acadecon.
Hey, that's me. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Very happy you were able and willing to do this with us.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity a couple other times to do shows that were specifically about starting cons, and my general preamble is use me as a good example of a bad example. I can probably help people figure out what not to do more than tell them what they should do.
Yeah, every time we get advice about starting cons, I think the first word that we ever hear is don't.
Yep, pretty much.
Which I can understand why.
Yeah, basically every time we've talked to somebody about starting a con, their general comment is, don't do it. And if I still have it, then they'll explain like 5 reasons why it's a terrible idea, and the comment is, if that still hasn't put you off, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Because...
Well, I think the biggest question is, why do you want to do it? What are your goals for it? And if any of them involve making money, then absolutely do not do it. But if it's just because you love certain things and you want to share that with a community, you want to build a community around a certain thing or whatever, then that makes sense. But if you're trying to make money, it is just like RPGs in general, like very difficult for anyone to make money in RPGs unless you're like Paizo and WotC, maybe Chaosium, maybe Monty Cook Games. There's a few out there that do it. I know there's some small press that manage to do it as well. But for the most part, people who make RPGs do it because they love it. I think running cons is very much the same thing.
Yeah, and our favorite cons are always the ones that people tend to run themselves or do just kind of for the fun of it more anyway. Like, you can definitely tell the ones that are there for the financial benefit as opposed to the funds.
Well, they make decisions, probably smart business decisions, but usually those are counter to like the original concept of the game. And it kind of like, it makes other things harder. So I don't fault anyone for wanting to make money, but when you prioritize that over other things, it's going to be noticeable.
Yeah, we've definitely noticed that a lot of the big corporate cons that are trying to make money are increasingly leading into what we refer to as the celebrity petting zoo model, where it's about how many celebrities can they get in who are going to draw people in the front door, and they don't necessarily care if people actually have a good experience once they're at the convention.
Mm-hmm. I see that a lot with like comic cons more so. Every celebrity that is willing to come in basically gets a booth, and there's like a schedule, and it's like, hey, for $60 you get a headshot, for $100 you get a group shot. And just like everything else, I'm glad those exist for people who want that. I have absolutely no desire for that at all. So it doesn't appeal to me as a person, and Acadecon especially. And even now the new one, I don't know if you know that I started a second con now where I live, Bluegrass Gaming Con. They're not about that at all, because I don't care about that at all. I don't think other people shouldn't care about it. I just don't.
Yeah, I do think that was something we noticed pretty immediately when we went to Acadecon. First time, as a reminder for our audience, we first went there 2 years ago, was we could tell the heart was there just immediately when we walked in. You could feel the passion there, and that was really, really cool to see.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, why don't we start at the beginning, because I know Acadecon came out of RPG Academy, so you do want to explain how that started or what that is, and we can kind of go from there?
Sure. So the RPG Academy, which is actually the third name of the podcast that I started, but that's a whole other story. It was a podcast that I started now probably 14 years ago, roughly. And the immediate idea was I had been running games since I was very young, and I had made a new friend who was interested in podcasting, and he wanted to learn how to run D&D games, RPGs, but D&D specifically. And so I was like, okay, I'll teach you, I'll teach you how I run games. And because he was listening to podcasts, at that point, I'd never listened to a podcast at all. He's like, well, why don't we record ourselves and we'll make that the podcast? Like, we'll talk about a game, we'll dissect what went well, what didn't. You'll give me advice, and we'll just record those conversations, and that will be the podcast. And he was also in like a garage band sort of thing, so he had recording equipment. So all that was pretty much taken care of. And sure, I don't care. So we started the podcast, and if you go back and listen to our very earliest episodes, it is very much that exact thing. Evan ran a game, and then we would debrief, and he would talk about like what he thought would happen, what we did that he didn't expect, how I might have, reacted to the thing the players did, or how I might have prepped differently, that kind of thing. So it very much started as here's how you can learn to be a game master specifically for D&D. And we hit kind of at the exact right time. Again, this was like 14 years ago. We certainly were not the first RPG podcast, but we did very well. There was a period of time for about a year where we were consistently in the top 10 of iTunes for that category. But we never really found a way to leverage that. I didn't have any business acumen. Evan had no desire to try to leverage that into a larger sort of thing. But the podcast lasted for about 13 years. It's currently on a permanent hiatus. And I have a friend of mine who's now taken over, and it's simply a YouTube channel, but it's the same philosophy. Our motto has always been, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. Again, doesn't matter what game you play, system or edition, what rules you use, don't use or misuse. As long as you and your friends are having fun at the table, you're doing it right. And so the YouTube channel has kind of picked up on that, but it's more short form video content, which seems to be what draws people. A podcast, I know you recently started one, seem to be dying, at least in this hobby genre. If you're not like a celebrity already or a health influencer, it seems like it's hard to gain an audience. But again, I never did it to try to get celebrity or money. I just would have been upset if it had happened.
Yeah. I will admit ours is basically like video diary format, stuff like that. It's useful for us generally. We don't expect it to be big. I think Critical Role has somewhat ruined people who don't have high-tech equipment generally for podcasts because everyone just expects the best now. And the youths don't have attention spans anymore. So
yeah, because we did see some drama with, somebody started a D&D podcast, and then somebody was calling them out for not having good production values. And it's just like, I don't expect everybody to be Critical Role. Like, they are now a massive, corporation with God knows how much money behind them.
Yeah. So when I started, and we were audio only, the thing that I did sort of hang my hat on is that we had very good audio quality compared to a lot of other podcasts. One part of that was because Evan already had equipment, and I'm kind of OCD. So I would sort of, spend a lot of time, hours and hours editing everything. Now, if you go back and listen, we have certain episodes that are terrible because we also didn't know what we were doing. And there were times we forgot to plug in one of the microphones, and it was just one or the other picking up both. When we started going to actual play, which was about, 8 or 9 months into the process, we didn't have microphones for the entire table. So we went through several iterations of a Yeti in the middle of the table, 3, microphones above everybody, like in a choir sort of thing. And most of those were terrible, but we were trying to put things out. But once we got it locked in, we actually had very good audio quality for, again, that time period. Today, it's so much easier to get good audio quality. The video component is the thing that people are lacking. Again, that switching cameras and having everyone in view and being able to see the dice rolls when that happens. Those are the things that I just have no desire to try to learn how to do. So I'm like, okay, I think I've done my thing. I'm going to let Jake take over the YouTube stuff, and I'm just going to enjoy going to cons and running my own. Which brings us back to your original questions, why I started this. I went to Gen Con. And at that time, I had never been to any convention, ever. Not a Comic-Con, not a local thing, just had never really done that. And the only reason I went to Gen Con...
the deep end.
Yeah, again, I didn't know what I was doing. But it was because of the podcast. I think we were a year and a half old at that point, and everybody on social media was talking about Gen Con, in the sphere. I was like, oh my, what is this thing? And I lived in Cincinnati at the time, which is a 2-hour drive from Gen Con in Indianapolis. So it was strictly a let's go to Gen Con for the podcast. It's like, it'll make sense. We'll talk about it. We'll do some promotion on Twitter. Maybe I'll do some interviews, that kind of thing. And it changed my life. I mean, it truly was a life-changing situation. I was suddenly around, like, I think this year or that year was like 60,000 people. And I'm like, oh my God, there's like all these other people also love this thing that I love. And there was all these games. It was such a feeling that on the way home, I'm like, I cannot wait a year to do that again. That was like a special thing for me. I was like, I just cannot wait. Now, a smart person would have like went home and like done some Google searching and figured out there's cons everywhere. As you know, like if you search, you can just about find a con somewhere almost every weekend, probably within a reasonable driving distance. I did none of that. I started my own. And then I realized how hard it was to find a weekend that there wasn't another convention on, because ours is on a terrible time because we tried to find a place and time that no one else was at. But ultimately, Acadecon happened because of the RPG Academy podcast and me going to Gen Con for the first time and just having an absolutely amazing experience. And to this day, Gen Con is kind of like my Christmas. I look forward to it every year. It's a really big deal for me and my friends that go. And I plan for it every year. I save up for every year. It's like, unless something tragic happens, I will be at Gen Con every year until I die, which is hopefully still a ways away.
That's awesome. And yeah, you should be grateful that, like, when I have that feeling of like this con is the most amazing thing ever, I just find more cons as opposed to starting my own con.
That's smart. See, you're smart.
We joke about starting our own con. It's just, the thing is, our university campus actually wouldn't be bad to have a small con on. It's just we're in the middle of nowhere and we don't expect to be able to convince anybody to drive for an hour to go to it.
See, well, and I will say here, so I started this new convention this last year. March was the first year. I'm from Southeast Kentucky originally, but I lived in Ohio for many, many years. Recently moved back to Kentucky, and I think I've been here 6 years now. So I was like, I thought about it like right away. And I know how much work Acadecon is. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that again. And I finally kind of, again, got dumb enough or enough courage to try it again. And that was exactly my thought, is like, we're not even going to attempt to expect people to drive. This is just locals only. If I can get 100 people that show up, that'll cover my costs for the convention center, because it's a pretty small convention center and you got to set everything up yourself. I was like, but as long as I can break even on the weekend, I'll be excited. And for the most part, that's what happened. I did have at least 4 people that I know of that drove 3 to 4 hours away, got their own hotel, because we did not have a room block, because I didn't expect that. And they were all very excited about the fact that this con was even that close to them. And they're already planning on coming back next year. So like, no matter where you are, you might have you're going to have 1,000 people probably, but you might have a dozen people that do want to drive in if what you're offering in the location that you're at, interests them. And I think that's that weird trade-off, is that, yeah, you may be in the middle of nowhere, but that probably means there isn't anything close. No one else is doing anything either. So if you become that thing that is there, that might be the draw you need. But again, it's a dumb idea. Don't do it. Like, okay, I can see Richard's eyes. Like, no, don't.
Don't tempt him.
Yeah.
So how did you go about starting at that point? I know some cons start just basically in people's basements where it's just a group of friends and it kind of grows. Was it like that, or did you start by renting a small space?
Yeah, so the first 2 Acadecons, and we talk about the numbering system in Acadecon, it's kind of like comic books. You just don't pay attention too much and it'll make sense. But the first 2 Acadecons happened in the same year, and they happened at my house. So again, came back from Gen Con. That was like August, I think. Usually it's in July, August. So that February, the following year, is when we had the first Acadecon, and it was in my basement. And it was like 12 people. Like, it literally was just like my friends. It was like a gaming weekend you probably had. We just called it Acadecon. But it was a lot of fun. Like, we had so much fun. It was amazing. And we had a little bit of a snowstorm. So Sunday, pretty much like no one came. Like the Saturday night, it got really snowy. So people went home. So there's like 3 people that were there on Sunday. I was like, that was fun, but we need to do it again. And the podcast, again, had continued to kind of grow. Evan at this point had left, and Caleb had come in, was now my co-host. And so we started talking about it, and we kind of just opened it up on the podcast. Like, literally just like, hey, some of you people that play or listen to these games, if you want to come hang out with us, you can come to my house. Again, I'm dumb, right? Also kind of thinking that no one's going to do that, right? Now, I had two couples drive multiple states to come hang out in my basement for 3 days, which was, again, incredible. But at the same time, it was a little weird because I didn't know these people. So my wife, who's not really into gaming, and my two kids who were very, very young, I think like 6 months and a year and a half at that age, I was like, why don't you go to a hotel just in case one of these people is an axe murderer, right? So we kicked them out of the house. We had fun in the basement. Again, it was a wonderful time, wonderful people. And it was one of the people who came from out of state who said, if you want to do this again, maybe we rent like a small ballroom. Everybody throws in $50, and that way you don't have to kick your family out. And that was sort of the kernel of the idea that led to me and Caleb running a Kickstarter. So for our first ever actual public convention, we ran a Kickstarter. We looked at all the places. We kind of figured out how much money we needed and all that kind of good stuff. And for first-time creators who had no idea what they were doing, we managed to raise a little over $4,000, I think. And that's what the first official Acadecon happened. It happened at this place called the Houston Woods Lodge, which is in like Oxford, Ohio. It's out in this kind of like weird, like, Native American First People Nation areas. There's a lot of just like interesting locale out there, very secluded. And because of the podcast, we were able to leverage a couple celebrities, Richard Baker, John Wick, Rob Schwab, who I'd all interviewed on my podcast and had a pretty good relationship with. They all came in for a very reasonable amount of money. I basically just paid their gas in the hotel. I didn't have to pay any sort of like, appearance fees. So we had a bit of a cachet, and we were able to get some people to come in. I think that first year we had like 130 people total that actually showed up. And I think by the end of the weekend, we raised I think we were up like $100. But again, that's with like an army of people who were volunteering their time and getting their own hotel rooms, right? So I didn't really make any money. My friends were being nice to me. But it was amazing. So we're like, okay, we got to do this again. But the Houston Woods Lodge was just not big enough. Like we took over the entire place. We're bursting at the seams. And it's actually a really popular wedding venue, or was at the time. So the fact that we found a 3-day weekend was kind of amazing, because when I looked again, they're like, you will never get another full 3-day weekend. So that's when we went to the Dayton Convention Center. I was closer to Cincinnati, but they were actually way more expensive. So the reason we go to Dayton is because it was cheaper. But also, if anyone ever pays attention to our logos, like there's often a dragon and a vulture that are kind of like at odds in some way. That comes from the Houston Woods Lodge, because there are vultures everywhere. And it kind of became the joke of the weekend. Like if a GM didn't show up, oh, vultures got him. Or if a player was late, oh, vultures got him. So it just sort of became part of the like, if it makes sense. But if you have no idea, you just walk in, why is there a vulture everywhere? Houston Woods Lodge, first ever public Acadecon. We're kind of just carrying it forward.
I love the lore and stuff like that generally.
It all makes sense when you're like Acadecon. If you know why it's called that, it makes sense. But if you just see that on a board somewhere, you're first going to think it's ArcadeCon. And secondly, you're going to think it's Acadecon. Like it does not flow off the tongue until you know what it means. It's like, oh yeah, it's our RPG Academy Convention. That makes total sense.
Yeah, I think we called it Acadecon when we started going. Then we heard other people pronounce it. So.
Yeah, but basically, as soon as we heard people there pronouncing it, we're like, oh, okay, it's pronounced that way. Okay.
Yeah. Again, it makes sense, but until you know, like I'd say most people still don't pronounce it right. So don't be offended, upset at all, because I'm not. Because again, it's a terrible name, but I kind of love it, so we're sticking with it. Thinking we're 14 years in, I'm not going to change it now.
Yeah, that's just rebranding. You don't want to do that. Like every so often, you tell me that like we named our podcast something terrible, and I'm like, well, we're not renaming it after a year.
Well, I found there's a thing called like con surfers, I think is the official term for people who go to all sorts of different types of convention as opposed to staying in one space, which is what we are. That said, I can't find it on the internet anywhere, so I don't know if somebody just made it up. Probably.
I mean, we heard it at a furry convention, and those guys have a lot of their own internal lingo, so who knows?
So do you want to talk about just start at the beginning of every year? So what's the first thing you do after Acadecon wraps up and after you've rested? What do you start doing for the next year?
Usually I check in with, because I do have a bunch of friends, and we call them faculty, but a bunch of friends who basically help me do this. Without them, it would not have worked. Like if it was just me, it absolutely would stop dead in its tracks. So I kind of check in, like, how's everybody feeling? Is everybody wanting to do this again? Because I've had, over the 14 years, I've had some people who are like, I don't think I can do this again. And other people are like, hey, I want to help. Can I join? So we, like there's kind of an egress and exit, egress, whatever, ingress, exgress of people coming in and out of the faculty, year over year. Most of the time it's the same people, but we've had a few people come in and out. So I usually check in with them to make sure that we're all good. At this point, we are pretty much committed to Dayton until that building falls down, and they just remodeled it, so hopefully that'll be a while. And our dates, we for the first like 8 years, we tried to change dates because we didn't like being in November. It's too close to Thanksgiving. There's a lot of people who won't travel twice in the month. It's also kind of close to the other holidays. But we've never been able to find another weekend that works, either because of my commitments, the DCC's availability, or whatever. So at this point, we're just done in November. So it's kind of a, the DCC will send me like, hey, are you wanting to do this again? Yes, here's the weekends we have available. And usually because we're a year out, we have priority. So unless someone has already physically paid them, we can say these are the weekends we're looking at. And if anyone else wants a weekend, we get to then go, oh, well, we want them. And then we can pay them to like hold them. So we have a little bit of flexibility to pick the weekend that we want, but it's usually the 1st or 2nd November. It just kind of depends on how the month falls. And then it's just a lot of like, who's going to do what on what committee, who's going to be helping with the vendors, who's going to help with the game library, who's going to help with registration. And it's going to sound like we're way more organized than we are because a lot of this has just evolved. Like every year we iterate and get a little bit better. But we now have like a team lead for registration. We have a team lead for game library. We have a team lead for vendors. We have a team lead for special guests. I'm in all the committees, but I have other people that kind of try to run those for me. I'm a bit of a control freak, so sometimes it's really hard for them to pry that out of my hands. But I have some really wonderful people who help me, and I try my best to let the smart people do the smart thing and me just be anxious in the corner. And really, like the thing I've been working on the last couple of weeks is floor plan. That is like the bane of my existence, that every single year at Acadecon, we have had a different floor plan because we've either had to move rooms or again, they were doing remodeling for a while. So they sometimes would give us a bigger room than we could afford because they were remodeling the other things. So then we had to like redesign everything. And this year it's going to be almost exactly the same, except we are now part of what's called the Tri-State Trail Tournament. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Several other local cons are doing it. So if you've gone to those, you probably have already seen it. We are the last leg. So the grand finale will be at Acadecon. So we have to give them space for their thing. So I'm trying to carve out enough room to give them what they need without going to a larger room, because larger room, larger money. So I guess probably the best answer to your question would be the first time I started, and usually the first piece of like actionable advice I give people who tell me they want to do this is you have to find a venue. Like that is absolutely the number one thing you have to figure out is where you're going to do this. How much is it going to cost? Because like by far, the venue is my biggest expense. Like it's more than roughly half of my budget every year is just the venue itself. So you got to figure out where you're going to do it, how much it's going to be, how much space it is, because then you kind of reverse engineer like, oh, we can have 200 people in this space. It cost me $2,000 to rent that space. So I need roughly $100 per person just to break even on venue costs. And that's not going to be all your costs, but that's going to be like the biggest portion. So that's kind of, you kind of reverse engineer how much are you going to charge for badges, what sort of games, like what can you offer? If you're a gaming convention like me, it's different because you got to have tables in the middle of the room. If you're more of a vendor, then you're going to have almost like a little maze and like stalls and, walkthroughs. So the layout of the floor plan is going to be different based on what you're trying to offer and you're trying to do. But venue is absolutely the number one thing you have to lock in every year. We just kind of already got that locked in because we're going to keep going back to Dayton until we can't, which hopefully maybe never. I mean, it'd be nice if we outgrew it, but at this point I would die. I would literally die if like 1,000 more people than I expected showed up this year. I'd be a corpse.
Yeah, because it's interesting comparing Acadecon to CincyCon, which is another board gaming convention. They have a smaller space, so they have to very much cram all the tables in, which one of the things we commented on that we really liked about the way Acadecon was set up was, yes, it was a lot of tables in a big room, but the room was big enough that you were far enough apart from the other tables that you had general background murmuring rather than it feeling oppressive. Whereas CincyCon is one that's very much outgrowing its venue but can't afford to move to a bigger space.
Yep.
So there were quite a few occasions where we felt very crammed in and it was a bit hard to hear the other people at the table around you, which, especially if you're trying to do like, deep engaging role play, can be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I've gone to CincyCon and Lexicon. It's the same group. They also run River City Con. Have been nothing but lovely to me, supportive. They've offered, like in the past, Kickstarters, they throw money my way. We've cross promote. So I have no idea who they are. truly as people, but as con organizers, they've been very nice and lovely to me. But they are more of a board game than RPG. For them, it's like 80-20, I think. Like, mostly they're a board game convention. They do like tournaments. They've been doing those forever. So their needs are a little bit different. Like most of our games happen on round tables. Round tables take up more space than a bunch of banquet tables. And even though there's more noise bleed, you can get a lot more people playing board games on banquet tables lined up in a row than you can 5-foot round tables that are, roughly X feet apart. But that is one of the decisions that I made, going back to our original conversation about money, that I would put as much space between our tables as I could. I still have to have a certain number of tables based on how many people I think are going to show up. And there's like a little math thing I do in my head of like, well, if we're going to have 800 people, we probably will never have more than 500 in the room at one exact moment. Because we also have stuff upstairs, there's panels on the second floor, there's a karaoke room, and just people come in and out. But on Saturday, you're probably going to have 75% of your total turnstile, you can assume, will be in the building at one time. I have to have enough space for every one of those people to sit down. So I stretch my tables and put them as far apart, honestly, as I can, and still get the minimum number of tables that I need. We had a really good year last year, a lot of growth, and we are looking at maybe expanding. So again, if you know what the DCC looks like, people listening may not, but the biggest hall in DCC is Hall B. It's kind of in the middle, and A would be on the left and C would be on the right. And they're each about a third the size of B. So roughly it's like 3/5 of the entire space. We're probably going to need A and B next year. If we grow to the same percentage this year, we will have to expand next year, which again adds a substantial cost. But it also allows us to bring in a lot more vendors. So if we can bring in enough vendors to kind of break even on the difference, then it makes sense. We even talked about it this year, but I was terrified because again, if you spend that money and then you don't have the people, you're kind of hosed. So I think we can still do it in B, but I'm a little concerned, honestly, that if we grow too much, we're going to run out of space this year. But I guess that's a better problem than no one showing up if I had to pick one.
Yeah, I do appreciate you saying that, just because of all the anxiety. And I've thought about this if I've ever thought about running a con. The biggest anxiety thing I have is people management, and the idea that both having too little people and having too many people are both very different types of problems, but they both create a lot of problems.
Yeah. 100%. They are both problems, but one's a little easier to swallow because you can next year we'll definitely get more space, but you can't be like, next year we'll definitely have more people. Maybe. And again, small con, one of our biggest opportunities is marketing. We've always struggled with that. And it became a joke, but I'm not joking. Every year for the last 8 years, I've had at least one person, sometimes more than that, but at least one will come up and go, I didn't know there was a gaming con in Dayton. I've been here X millions or X number of years. I never knew. I'm like, I don't know how to change that. I literally, we're in the newspaper, we're on the news, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook. Probably have someone on Instagram. I don't officially run that, but I'm sure someone does. I do not know how to get more people to know about it. We've talked about maybe a billboard, but that seems like it's very expensive. And then we also looked at maybe putting an ad in one of the local movie theaters, but that's also very expensive. And, again, marketing is the bane of my existence because you spend money hoping that you will come out ahead, but it's very hard to know and track. So for example, there's the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is in Dayton. It's an Army base, with the Air Force. I found out they have their very own gaming, there's a gaming group within the military. And so we paid the most we've ever spent on marketing just to market specifically to the Air Force Base. So everybody on base and extended from there got an email blast. It was on their website. They have a bowling alley on base. So if you've ever been to a bowling alley, they have little screens when you bowl and the little, cowboy bowling ball, does this little thing. Those were popping up for the Acadecon, and they all had a code that, hey, if you see this and you buy a badge, you can get X% off. And it was just a way for us to track how many people might see this, right? We were willing to lose a couple bucks per badge to know, we brought in 30 people, 40 people, 100 people. 0 people used that code the year that we did that. Now, maybe they saw it and just didn't use the code, or they didn't catch the code, but they did see the name. So I can't say 100% that nothing happened. But we did not get our money's worth for that advertising. And so then it concerns me, like, how much do I spend this year in the other, I hate Facebook. It's a horrible thing, but it's the most effective marketing we've ever had. So every year, sadly, I give them some of my money because it works. I can see that it works. Everything else is just throwing a dart against a dartboard and hoping you hit good.
Yeah, because I don't remember how you found out about Acadecon in the first place.
The tip I normally give people for tabletop cons generally is go on tabletop events, click conventions, and then it just shows all the conventions that are using tabletop events. And that's likely how I found it, is just by looking on tabletop events for it. I will admit, as a shy but very extroverted person, if I see any event that I want to do, I'm immediately going to do it. So advertising is effective on me, but I don't think I'm the average market clientele generally.
Yeah.
And it's also something I do find interesting. I do wonder a little bit about, like, Gen Con is extremely huge in the modern era, and Origins is also, I think, building back up again a little bit after the pandemic, which I'm happy about. But I do wonder, because I didn't even know tabletop cons existed 2 years ago.
Oh.
And then my biggest barrier for entry was, honestly, well, I'm going to these games and I'm playing with strangers, which for me presents, I think, more barriers than it does for people who may be a bit different presenting, but I think for anyone is a little bit nerve-wracking the first time. Even if you're a very experienced RPG player, it's sometimes hard to be at tables with people you don't know.
No,
now that I've done it a bunch, it's great. But you really have to know that the community is going to be like that there. And it's another thing I really think that Acadecon does sell well. Like, I know word of mouth is impossible to advertise and stuff like that, but because I think everyone who goes to Acadecon, or at least hopefully everyone who goes to Acadecon, has a great experience, it can travel more by word of mouth. Like, it's, I think, the RPG con we recommend for people who want to start going to RPG cons, but don't want to start with Origins or Gen Con for very obvious reasons.
Yeah, no, it worked for me, but I completely see how it would not work for everyone. And again, I love hearing that. That is literally what we are trying to accomplish from the very first day we went to public. Is like, I want this to be a great first con. If you've never been to a con before, we will take care of you. But at the same time, if you're an old hand, there's still going to be things here for you. We're going to have some games with some amazing game masters that you're going to play games that, maybe we don't have 5,000 offerings like Gen Con, but like 90% of ours are going to be A+ games. We're going to have a few B's and C's. It happens, no matter what you do. The GM doesn't show up. They get sick. That happens every year. And at a small con like ours, that's more devastating because there may not be 37 other games at that time that you now need something to get into. So that's a frustrating thing, but it happens at every con, but the percentages are different for ours. But we wanted it to be a great first con for a family, for someone who never, singles, married, couple, family, whole thing. We want you to come to our con and have a great time. And we put a lot of effort in making sure that we are that. And nice to hear that at least in some ways it's paying off, and for some people it is.
Yeah, Catacomb was the con we first GM'd at. I think that's part of the reason why we chose to go the first time, is we wanted to try GMing, and we didn't want to try GMing at Origins or Gen Con quite yet. Yep. Both of us had experience GMing, but we'd never GM'd at a con before, so it was where we tried it for the first time, and we definitely got the bug there, especially you.
Yeah, well, again,
go ahead.
Part of the problem is I'm very much a frustrated creative, and I've discovered that I find it very difficult to sit down and write a book or something like that, purely because I get to a certain point in the writing process, decide everything I've done up to that point sucks, and I don't want to keep writing it because I'm far too harsh on my own work. Whereas if I'm RPG planning, I don't have to work out the nitty-gritty details. I can leave that to the players. But it does mean my brain is constantly coming up with stupid ideas that I have to plan out. So I now just have a spreadsheet of games that I either have run or want to run at conventions. That I've color-coded just to keep track of what's where in the process. And yeah, I just frequently look at, okay, what can I potentially run at this con that I think would be the right fit for the vibe of this convention?
And then I look at the list and it's all obscure sci-fi stuff, and I'm like, can you at least pick one thing I can play, please?
You can't please everybody, Richard.
I run things for you fairly frequently.
Yeah, I do like that. So I know you GM a little bit at Acadecon. Do you want to talk about that experience?
Yeah. So I started GMing at Gen Con, again, because of the podcast. A few things I've done there. I've done panels on how to get started GMing, very much condensing 1,000 episodes of the podcast into an hour overview sort of thing. And I've ran a learn to play D&D adventure several times. It's basically the same adventure. I run it. It's aimed for people who've never played before or someone who's coming back into it. Because with 5th edition was so explosively popular. There were a lot of people who played when they were kids or when they were in college, first to second edition, maybe even third edition, and had fallen off, and they might be coming back. Sometimes I had people coming back with their kids. And so I kind of specialized in that's who I'm running for. So I was very detailed on my, my description. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm going to give you enough of the basics that you will know enough to know if you want to keep doing this or not, but then it'll be on you to, investigate further. So I'd had a little bit of success and fun running to other conventions. So it really kind of only made sense that we would run for our own. And to toot my own horn a little bit, early on, the podcast was, again, we hit it right at the right time. So there were people who came specifically to play games with me, whether I ran it or just as a player. Caleb, my co-host at the time we started, same thing. People came because they wanted to play games with us. So it kind of made sense that I would run some games. But the ones that have kind of like continued, I do still run that beginning D&D one, though I haven't ran that in a couple years. But Scooby-Doo Dread and Lord McAllister's birthday. I'm sorry, I lost my brain there for that. Which both of you have played in both of those are the things that I generally run every single year. I absolutely love both of those events. The Lord McAllister can be a little bit more hit or miss because there's so many factors and sometimes it's hard to control them all. But Scooby-Doo Dread has consistently been one of the most fun experiences as a GM. And I consistently have players tell me that was their favorite event of the year that they got to play. I'm not trying to set either of you up, but if you want to corroborate that in some way.
We adored it the year we did it.
It's still, I think, one of our, we've played, I think, probably 50-ish games across cons now. It's within our top 5 easily. We talked about it the whole drive home the entire time, which we didn't have a podcast back then, but
the lost episode.
Yeah. Well, it's also I don't want to reveal too much because it is a game that you very much experience by playing it. It's a mystery, as you would expect with Scooby-Doo, but it's definitely, as somebody who's kind of hit or miss on horror games generally, it rode the line of horror and realism, and it was really how to do adult Scooby-Doo. And it was also nice that it hit a time where we're getting so many bad iterations of adult Scooby-Doo. Yours was amazing.
Well, again, thank you. I love that game. And because I have ran it so many times, it's easier because I've probably ran it 30 times maybe, because I've ran it at every Acadecon. I've run it at other places, one-offs. I've run it at Gen Con. I've ran it at Origins. I'd say at least 24, if not more. And it does kind of even no matter how many players I have and the way they approach it, there are some similarities. And pretty quickly I can be like, oh, this is sort of how this group is forming. This person is the true Scooby-Doo person who knows all the lore, and they're the ones that are going to lean into that. And the other group, they're just here to say jinkies and drop their glasses, which is great. I'm fine with that as well. So and again, this is kind of off topic, but it's something I've been talking about on other shows, is running the same game over and over again can make you a better game master. I think there's absolutely something to that. I get wanting to run a variety of games and I don't get bored as a GM, but when I run the same game over and over again, it lets me fine tune little things, but also as soon as I start to recognize patterns, I know which dials to turn to make sure that this group has an amazing experience. Not trying to make them have the same experience as another group, but I can kind of see some pathways that it might go. And I love running the same game over and over again. I find it it reduces my anxiety. Because the first time I ever run a new game, I'm terrified. And even now I'm terrified when I start, but once I start, I'm okay. But yeah, I just highly encourage anyone listening, if you've never ran a game before, run the first time and just run it again and again and again and again, and you'll have fun.
Yeah, I don't know if we told you this, but I made you study for Scooby Dread. So we're let's just watch 20 episodes of Scooby-Doo just to make sure we're prepared for this game, which is not something you're required to do.
No, not at all.
Which did mean we got a bunch of the references to some of the earliest episodes of Scooby-Doo that you laced into the initial setup.
Yeah, I try to make it where it's not required that you know a lot, because I don't know a lot. I just grew up watching it. But if you do know, there's going to be a few things you're like, I get what that is. And that's all I'm one for that little member berry, I got that, Leo pointing at the TV meme. That's all I'm going for.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way when I'm planning specific things where it's just okay, I have written this adventure, assuming you're going to have a bit of basic knowledge about the universe. Here's a couple of throwaway references that high up fans will get, and otherwise I don't go in assuming you're going to be a super fan of if it's a thing based in an existing universe.
Or, it's a thing that's based on one episode of an obscure sci-fi show that the GM has written halfway through the campaign, and only a certain person is the person at the table who gets it, and then they spend 5 minutes talking about this thing over the audience's heads. That's happened at multiple tables.
I genuinely do not know to which thing you are referring.
That's because it's happened multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of 3 different instances.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain this one to me later.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but ideally, someone at the table gets it, and they have a slightly heightened experience for that moment, but no one else feels like they've lessened their experience. Because they didn't get a thing, they have a worse time. It's neutral to good. All those references, what you're aiming for.
And we have definitely had those moments, certainly playing at conventions, where one of us has realized what is going on, and it's okay, hang on, this is out of character knowledge. Oh God, we're in trouble.
I've rolled for it before. I'm just how dumb is my character? I also, one thing I wanted to compliment you on about a GM, and we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before generally, is I think you're very good at realizing when players are quiet but want to say more and are kind of hanging back because they just don't want a big role in the scene. And it's hard to tell the difference a lot of the time.
Yeah, I don't know that well, one, thank you. Two, I don't know if that's a conscious thing, but that's kind of how I play. I can be a big personality. I try very hard to be personable when I'm talking to people, but in role-playing games, I'm very happy to set back. And I talk about the bump, set, spike method of volleyball. I want to try to set other people up so that they can have a wonderful experience. And sometimes that requires me to be quiet, and sometimes it requires me to come forward. So I think I recognize when other people are kind of doing the same thing I do. And then I'm always well, we haven't heard from you in a while. What do you think? Or if they start to say something, I'll make sure that we give them the floor at least a little bit. But then also sometimes people are anxious. They don't want to be spotlighted. So it's a dance. It takes some emotional IQ. I think that's one of the things I am good at. But I don't know if I consciously make decisions as much as just sort of I check the table. But I appreciate that you've noticed it and it seems to be doing, again, that's what I'm aiming for. So it's nice to know that it's working at least sometimes.
Yeah, it's very fun. Do you want to shift back to cons?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any more GM questions?
Yeah. I've never met a tangent I didn't like.
Yeah. Our podcast is very tangential.
So I guess to circle back to go ahead.
I was just going to say 90% of the time, how bad our tangenting is depends entirely on how long the drive home is. The last couple of weeks, it's been 5+ hour drive, so the episodes have ended up 3 hours long just because we needed something to keep us awake.
Yeah, I can absolutely say that. And probably how tired you are. If I'm tired, I'm going to tangent more because I can't hold a train of thought longer. But trying to go back to what you're talking about, the organization process. So floor plan is something I spend a lot of time on. Marketing, either what we are or not going to do, and sort of crafting that. But there's also a lot that goes into the organization of getting your GMs, getting them their badges, them submitting games, going through the process of reading it, making sure that it's an appropriate description. Just does it make sense? Could I know what I'm signing up for? I do all that manually. Probably a dumb idea, but I do. So I have a floor plan that I make, and all the tables are listed like A1, A2, A3, that kind of thing. Some of them are oversized tables. Those are specifically for games that need larger footprints. So like a big miniatures game or just an RPG that plays 8 players, like Die Laughing is one. Most of our RPGs, again, another thing about Acadecon, we try to limit our table sizes. Unless you specifically ask to have more than 5 players, none of the games do. Because that's one thing I don't like at Gen Con and Origins is they'll put 7 or 8 people around a table just because they get player hours. So it's more beneficial for the GM to have a bigger table. And I've played in games with 8 players that was fun. Most of the games I play with 8 players are terrible. So I play the odds and I just try to avoid those wherever I can. But I go through and I assign every game to an individual table. Takes a lot of time and I'm probably not doing a good job, but it is something I manage and that takes up a lot of my time as well. And then staffing. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of people who are willing to help me do this because it is a big commitment. Because again, I pay none of these people. Most of them pay their own. I tell them you don't have to buy a badge and you don't have to buy a t-shirt. I will cover that for you. Most of them still buy a badge and a t-shirt anyways. And then I usually get one hotel room that's for anybody who wants to stay. You just pack as many people in there as you want. So I covered that. But beyond that, I pay these people nothing. So I don't know why they keep coming back, but they do. But yeah, figuring out who's going to be where, when, just like any other job that if you're a manager, people, labor, that's your number one expense. It's your number one, concern. Expense for me is little, but yeah, who's going to be here, who's going to be opening, who's going to be closing, all that kind of good stuff, just to make sure that we have things to do. And then we even have a couple people that we kind of keep in like a holding pattern who can GM like on demand. So if we do have a GM that cancels, we're like, hey, Brad, you're up. You're going to go run your Monster of the Week game that you run a whole times. Hey, Chris, you're up. You're going to go run Star Wars. So just in case we do have a GM cancel, if we have that person on hand, they can just jump in and run something so that we don't have to try to find 5 people something else to do. If they're all willing to do this game, we have a really good prepared GM ready to go. But those are probably the biggest things that we do: floor plan, marketing, and then labor.
Yeah, I didn't know you had backup GMs. That's really, really awesome. Like generally when GMs cancel, you're just kind of out of luck for that time period.
You still are most of the time, but we do have a couple, again, just not really like dedicated, but just like we have people that have the registration desk, like, Brad, you're up, and he'll just drop anything and go do it. So it's worked out in the past, but I'm sure there are times where it's canceled and we just didn't know about it. Like they didn't come tell us. They just like, oh, they didn't show up and they left. But yeah, so I probably actually maybe should market that better. Like, hey, if your GM doesn't show up, come tell me. I might be able to do something about it.
Yeah, we've definitely had that kind of impromptu happen at cons where a GM didn't show up and one of us just pulled something out to play. Yep.
Yeah, that ended up happening at
River City.
River City this year because it was the weekend of that massive snowstorm.
So yes.
On Sunday, basically the only people there were the people who were stuck there.
And we were the only, I think, GM slotted that morning. So
gosh.
Our players also weren't showing up, so we just kind of combined games into like one giant game. So people seem to have fun with it.
I've gone to River City Con a couple times, and I wanted to go this year, and it just didn't work. I don't remember what, but there was something happened, and then when that snowstorm, I was like, okay, I kind of lucked out, because that probably would have been scary and miserable. But sounds like you made the best of it, so I'm glad that you were there.
Yeah, we had planned to be stuck in beforehand, so we had planned for that generally. We did have to call our local sheriff's office because Ohio was under level 3 snow emergency and you weren't supposed to drive, and we weren't sure like what exactly that meant because they weren't being very specific about, is that highways, is that like off the passage? So you called the local sheriff's office and we got a answer that said people were driving on the highways, so it was fine, by a person with a southern accent despite being in Ohio.
Well,
I don't know how I managed to get the most like stereotypical deputy possible, but anyway.
Yeah, I think level 3 is you're not supposed to drive, but and people are going to drive, so it's just but you made it home safe. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah. Another thing I really like that you do is you give really like clear directions about stuff you should put in an RPG description for Acadecon, because one of our biggest, I think, frustrations at cons generally is you go up to a table and you think a game's going to be one thing, like mostly like role-playing, and then it's a very number crunchy rules-based system, just so you can like organize a little bit better.
Yeah, Acadecon is the type of convention that I would want to go to. And again, good and bad, it is absolutely my sensibilities. And as I go to a lot of cons, I love going to cons, but some of my biggest frustrations were bigger tables. Like I'm just not a fan of 6 or more usually is a bad experience for me. So we try to limit to 5. And then just like that, where I'm like, I thought I was signing up for, because your version of D&D and my version of D&D may be very different, but we're both playing D&D, particularly like maps and minis versus theater of the mind, rules as written versus rule of cool. So when I started going to cons and I just got in some bad games, I'm like, man, I wish the description had been more clear because I just wouldn't have signed up for this. And someone else who wanted that experience could have signed up. So from day one, that was one of my things. Like, I need you to be very clear. Are pre-gens provided? Are materials provided? Are rules going to be taught? Is this available to new players or do you need experience? And then what type of game is it? Is it rules as written? Is it rule of cool? Is it theater of the mind? Because I just think it makes it easier. You're going to have more fun if you get into games that match your sensibilities and avoid games that don't. And that just frees up everyone else to get what they want. So it just makes sense to me that you would do that. And because I do manage all those myself and read all of them, I mean, I'd say 90% of them are fine as is, but every now and then I'll be like, you didn't say if rules were, if pre-gens were included or not. You didn't say blah, blah, blah. So I, occasionally have to send it back. And it's usually just someone who just copied and pasted from another convention. Like they didn't write it themselves, or they had written it once 5 years ago and they run the same thing. So they're usually like, yeah, of course. In fact, I can't think of a time anyone's ever been like, no, I'm not going to, change it or update it. But I do think setting those expectations clearly at the beginning just makes for a better experience for everybody, including as a GM. Because if I'm running a game and I can tell the players are miserable, I'm going to be miserable. That's not fun for me either, but I'm not going to run the game differently. That's how I run games. So we're all just going to be miserable for for the next hour or whatever. So I just think it makes sense for everybody to be more clear. So.
Yeah, we've actually deliberately tried to take the lessons from that and apply it any time we are submitting games for other events, and just try to be as clear as possible in our description so people know what they're getting into.
And I think it's largely led to us having, I think, every single time we've gymmed at a con, we've had a good to fantastic table every single time, which is, I think, a large part due to knowing those descriptions. Also, our dog is now awake, so.
Hey, boy.
Hi, Emma.
It's Emma.
Hi, Emma.
Yeah, she was also up with us last night, looking after the students. So yeah, she's been a bit zonked today.
One thing I had a question about is I know you do VIP tickets, and I think that they get to register early, but only for one game. Is that correct? I was a little bit confused just because I haven't had VIP before.
Yeah, no. So again, it's one of those things where that might be one of the few things we did semi-business decision, because we had people that we knew were just like, they loved us for whatever reason, podcast, personal, whatever. And they've said I would, I want to support you more. And they would just donate money. So I was like, well, why don't we just make a badge that's more expensive? Doesn't really do a whole lot extra. And we called it VIP, and it has worked. So I'm very glad we did it. But when we first did it, VIP were allowed to register just early. And unfortunately, we had some situations where there were a few games that were high, priority. People wanted these games, whether it was myself or another special guest. There's a couple times where we had James D'Amato from One Shot who came down, and their games were very high demand, and they just got sold out. And so we did get some pushback that really wasn't fair for VIPs to get full reign. So now the rule is VIPs get to register a week early. They can register for one event on each day. So one Friday, one Saturday, one Sunday, or any two. Because they may not be there Sunday. So they don't want to, but they can pick any two games or one on each day. And really, I'm sure there are people that are upset, but no one has complained directly to me about it. And it seems to have alleviated that concern that everything will be taken by VIPs. We also don't have that many VIPs compared to the number of overall badge holders. And also, again, when I schedule games, if I see there's two games I think are really high priority, I will put them at the same time. I will try to make or overlap them so that you couldn't do both, so that you do have to choose one or the other to also help alleviate that. So it's part of a conscious decision, but yeah, I think it's a good middle ground actually we raised the prices on VIP badges last year, but we now add in a t-shirt because most of our VIPs were buying a t-shirt anyways. And now it just makes it easier on me because we don't order that many extra. We actually ran out last year because they're at the numbers that we order, they're expensive. We're not ordering 10,000 shirts and getting them for $2 each. Our shirts are $20 each when we buy them because we don't get that many, and we sell them for $25. So if I know how many to order, it just makes it easier. So just adding those extra in that we are pre-ordering rather than, I guess we order 10 of every size and hope, it's just made it easier on us as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that as a compromise because I know it's a very big question that a lot of game cons have about, do you give VIPs earlier registration? And a lot of the big cons don't, I think, because of the risks that you talk about with doing that. But at the same time, that gives them a little bit of extra bump. And also, I find it admirable that Acadecon, for its size, still has a ticket scrum, because most cons about this size don't really have that same ticket scrum where when tickets open, you actually have to be on the website at the time that they open in order to get into the most popular games, whereas you do.
2 years in a row, she has been quite literally logging into tabletop events at a different convention. It's been SubasaCon 2 times in a row, just by timing. Getting our tickets for Acadecon as soon as they go live, just to make sure we get into the various things we want to get into.
To me, that just makes
fun for me.
Again, Gen Con is the one that I know that doesn't do that, but they also have their own proprietary system. So I can't even imagine how that works. And I did want to touch on tabletop events because you mentioned that we didn't use tabletop events for our first couple years. Again, we just didn't know any better, and we were just kind of making it work. And again, that first year with all the vultures, one of my friends who helps support us every year, he has access to a plotter printer. It's the gigantic printers. So we basically made an Excel spreadsheet, and he just printed them off poster size. And we literally would have, you just walk up to the wall and you'd write your name in. So it'd be like table A1, D&D, 4 o'clock, space 1, space 2, space 3, and people just write their names in spaces. It was a terrible system because people would just like erase other people's names or they just add spots. Like we'd have clearly 4 tables and we have like 7 people sign their name. But we've had to this day, people are like, I want you to bring back the posters. I'm like, no. But it's just one of those things from that first time that we carry forward, that lore you talked about that I love. But Tabletop Events is an amazing website. And yes, they do take a small cut out of what we do. It is well worth it. And again, just for the advertising, like you mentioned, you can just search Tabletop Events and find conventions that we are now on there. So I use Tabletop for Bluegrass Con, even though I probably could have done that on a scratch pad. But no, we use Tabletop Events. I will always use it going forward unless something happens, because it's a company, they might screw it over. But right now, it's amazing. I suggest everyone use it because it's great.
Yes, PAX, please take note. Your system's stupid. I've never been to
heard
PAX, but I've heard that it's bad.
That's, again, I thought about going to PAX, but when people tell me that you just like show up and just start like, Marco, I'm like, nah, I am not interested in that at all.
No, well, we've been commenting on the fact that Origins tickets are supposed to be going on sale in like 2 weeks, and they don't have the full schedule live yet, and we're starting to get worried because we need time to plan everything.
Okay, so go ahead.
Just if you know one thing about Origins attendees is that they complain. Like, they complain way more than the Gen Con people. Like, and some of that's legitimate, and some of it's not, but you're going to get a lot of complaints.
Some of it is earned. But I'm going to Origins, and I was on a Facebook group, and so this may be a tip. I'm telling you new, maybe you already know. Even though there's nothing showing on Tabletop Events, if you click the download CVS, it's populated. So today I was going through and picking out what I wanted based on it opening up, and then you can do the like thing so that you only see the things that you've liked. So there is a way to view it, but unless someone tells you or you already know that, because I didn't know it till yesterday.
Yeah, we have friends that have been going through it, and it is nice, but the interface is obviously a lot more clunky than Tabletop Events generally, and it also like disadvantages people who aren't chronically online, which is also unfair.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was also like, why is this not populated? I was kind of getting freaked out, and that's why I started like searching, like, hey, when is it going to be released? And someone said you can already get to it. It's like I kind of found it organically because I was same thing. I'm like, that seems weird to me, but again, they've got like 30,000 people, and I'll be lucky to get to 1,000. So, joke's on me. But yeah, I also thought it was very weird.
I also try to be respectful. Like, they are also largely volunteer run, and I know that they've traded off their particularly RPG department to someone new this year. And they are, I think, trying to rebuild a lot generally. But it is also interesting if we're talking about conlore, because I know both Gen Con and Origins, I assume you didn't attend this far back, but I knew you used to have to just basically like mail in your game preferences to them, and then they just sent you like a list of what you got into.
That's before my time, but that is wild.
So. Yep. This was pre-internet, obviously.
I mean, but there is something about that actually kind of sounds lovely, but my anxiety, there's no way I would die.
Same. And I also feel like these days, I feel like both of those two cons are too big. Like, can you imagine going through 80 different wish lists of people manually by hand and then trying to put them all into games?
And then unless you had one person doing all of it, or you were on like some sort of like synchronized Google Drive, like I might say, oh, this is open. And it's not now. And you're right beside me doing the same thing. So you would have things that got taken by people that they weren't actually. So no, that sounds like hell. I don't say that sounds like what I will. And if I go to hell, that's what I'll be doing. I'll be doing like manual organization of Tabletop Events for eternity.
Again, I know how difficult it is just for our registrar doing that with our students. We've only got, 1,200?
1,200 students, none of whom want to choose their own classes because they're lazy. So we have to just tell them what classes to take.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about the day-to-day at Acadecon. So when it starts, like, what do you, on that Friday when people are starting to show up, what are you worried about? Where's your head at? What are you thinking?
So we also just recently started, but we now have a setup day on Thursday, which has been a lifeline for us because we generally would just try to get there like 6 o'clock, 6:37 on Thursday and just start throwing stuff up because people will show up at 8. Games don't start till 9. And like we were still like, bins haven't been unpacked. So now we go on Thursday, we have a few hours. But one of the, again, this is just, I'm dumb. Okay, I know that about myself. So I make a map in Excel. I don't have CAD, but I have an Excel spreadsheet that I use for my maps, and each square is 1 foot. So I just like literally make a little circle out of like tables, that's a round table, and squares is square tables. Vendors is probably the most anxiety inducing thing I have, because I sell vendor spots. People have given me money. My map is not always accurate. It's close, but sometimes it's off. So the first thing we do on Thursday is we measure out the vendor spots to make sure that we can actually fit everybody in that I have already sold spots to. And so one of the things I've always done in the past is I've usually like cheated and left one open on each of the 3 walls just in case. And there have been years where if I had not done that, it would have been bad. And again, we keep changing the floor plans. So you think I do it once and you're done. No, because every single year it's a different room or a different setup. This year it is exactly the same. I'm very happy to say that it's exactly the same as last year, so I did not have to do this. But we still have to measure out the vendor spots. The DCC sets everything up for us. Like we work back and forth. I send them a floor plan. I show them my Excel spreadsheet, and I have like, this table is 8 feet from this table, and this table is 9 feet from this table. So I give that to them. They put it in their system, which is like a CAD-based system, and make sure it all fits. And they set all that up. But there's almost always something off. So if, like, for example, last year was the first year that we did open play where we had the rows of banquet tables. That was the first year where we did that. I forgot to tell them we needed chairs. So we showed up and we had like 30 tables with 0 chairs. That's a problem. So all of a sudden we're filling out chairs and putting chairs out there. I thought that was pretty obvious, but apparently it wasn't, because unless I tell them to put chairs places, they don't put chairs places. Again, you would think, right? But vendors, marking them out to make sure that we have them, because we also let vendors unload on Thursday now too. So that's like the first thing that has to be done, is making sure that the vendors are marked out. They know where to go. The ones who paid for electricity have it. The ones that paid for tables have it, all that kind of stuff. And then we just start unpacking. We have the game library, which is in like 30, 40 totes at this point, plus my own personal games that I also bring to that. Every year we try something different. We're trying something different this year too, but we're actually going to do them alphabetized this year. So at Bluegrass Con, even though it was like 100 people, we brought the entire game library. We set everything up, and we bought a bunch of those like wire cube rack thingies. We had some of them last year, but we bought way more. And so we were able to like tier, and on way less tables, we got all the games out, and then we organized them alphabetically. So now they're in totes alphabetically. So this is totes with A, this tote has A and B, this has B and C. So we're hoping that will streamline the process of getting all of them out and just make things a lot easier. But a lot of it's just like double checking the maps, double checking the chairs, talking to the vendors, make sure they know where they're going, talk to DCC about any potential issues like construction or the air doesn't work or that kind of thing. And then it's just waiting for people to show up, start playing games and having fun.
So are you able to relax once the con starts, or are you still like in that hyperspace mode?
Oh yeah, no, I do not relax at all. Every year, like the people that love me and who help me do this are always like, you need to play a game with us. And every now and then I will try to play a board game, not a role-playing game, because I can't spend 4 hours, but I might spend like 20 minutes, but then I always jump up and run around. Like it's terrible playing a game with me because I'm going to get up and leave halfway through. So no, I am, live wire anxious. Every issue I have is on high alert for like 4 days. Then after it's over, there's that sort of like a come down high, I guess, in a way. It's like it's sort of like that was great. But in the moment, it's terrible. But like on reviewing everything, I go through all the positives and negatives, and I feel really good. There were 3 years in a row, no lie, where I went to Acadecon knowing that was the last Acadecon. I was like, I'm never doing this again. It's not worth it. We're barely making any money. We're losing money. I spend all this time and effort and energy, and it's just so much. And I was just like almost angry, like going there, like, why are we even doing this? I'm so stupid. And then every year, by the time it was over, so many people had said, oh, I love this con. It's my favorite con. This is what I look forward to. That like the Grinch, like my heart melted over that weekend. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it again. Luckily, we've kind of got past this. The last couple of years have been so much better. Again, we're iterating, we're getting better, and just it's getting smoother. Knock on wood, nothing terrible happens this year, but it's actually getting easier to do it as we go because we're getting better at it. But for me, it's still, I maybe get 3 hours sleep each night. I'm anxious. Everything's falling apart. I keep forgetting to check my phone because I tell people, hey, if you need anything, text me. I don't look at my phone for 10 hours. Like, oh my God, I have like 1,000 messages, and then usually most of them have already gotten taken care of. Like a vendor would be like, I don't know where to park. someone else figured it out for them, but I'm just like, so yeah, no. As much as it hurts, I don't enjoy Acadecon in the moment. I enjoy it when it's over, if that makes sense. Kind of the same thing I always tell people, I hate mowing my yard, but I love having a freshly mowed lawn. Like when it's done, it's great. But in the moment, I hate it. And that's exactly how Acadecon is. So I shouldn't say I hate it. It's a lot in the moment, but it's really nice upon reflection.
You get to have everyone that experience in that story, and I imagine that's nice, but it's hard to see in the moment how much fun people are having when you're not having fun.
Yes, that is absolutely a part of it. But again, and again, I'm not like fishing for compliments. Both of you have been very complimentary this whole time, but it is really nice when someone does take a moment, because there are complaints every year. There are complaints, the heat or the cold, GM didn't show up. I didn't have a game library game, or someone checked out a play to win and kept it all day, and so they didn't get to play it, or they didn't win the play to win they wanted to win. Food is the number one issue we get every year. The food's terrible. So I get complaints, but they're all pretty reasonable. So it's really nice when if someone says, I had a great time, and they want to share that. So whether it's anyone listening to this podcast, if you like the Con Couple podcast, tell them. Trust me, they would love to hear that. They would love a review if there's a way to do that. You may think, oh, this is a lovely Con Couple episode. I'm sure everyone loves it. Still nice to hear. So yeah, positive feedback just makes people feel nice.
In our case, it's a little random, although we always do love the compliments we get generally. Just because of this is also a very personal experience, we do get people coming up to us that just know way more about us, which is a very weird experience. Well, the very fun one.
Parasocial relationships, Critical Role, or even like our podcast, there are people out there that like they've spent hundreds of hours with you, and they in the car, like they've been in the car with you, having these same conversations, so they feel like they know you. And that's the great thing about podcasts. But it can also be very weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It's never been weird in like a creepy way. It's just been weird in oh, cool, we have this really cool connection, and you liked listening to me talk long enough to listen to me talk for 3 hours, which is the highest compliment anyone can give me, really. Do you want to ask questions? You want me to keep asking questions?
No, you're good. I'm enjoying this. I'm also sleep deprived. It's
yeah,
great.
I know, and I went through this before we went into last night. I'm like, do you just want me to do the thing where I ask all the questions, or do you want to like actually prepare questions in advance that you're to prepare?
Yeah, then we got roped into multiple games of Blood on the Clock Tower with the students, and I didn't have time to plan anything.
That's fine. I'm not blaming you. So, I know you mentioned the moving into a second room. Are there any other like improvements you would like to make in the coming years for Acadecon?
That is a good question. It's going to sound really terrible if I say no, but nothing. I mean, I guess better organization. Again, like the small iterations. Like when we added tablecloths last year, that was a new thing because the DCC, it is ridiculously expensive to rent the cloth nice ones. So we got like the vinyl ones, which again, there were some criticisms. Some people hated them. They got torn up and people picked at them, but it made a very nice presentation because we like color coordinated them with our logo. So I think the room looked very nice. So that was like a small thing. Alphabetizing the game library, I think, will make a big difference next year. We're going to get walkie-talkies this year. It's on the list for that way registration can talk to game library, because we had times where people were like, I didn't get a pee break, or I had really, it was really hard. We got overwhelmed in this spot and we didn't have anybody to even go tell you. So we're going to have walkies be like, hey, we need extra help at the game library, or hey, we need extra help at registration, which should make the labor process a little bit easier. We can move people around a little bit faster when we have opportunities. So that's a big thing. Probably one of the biggest changes for me is I have always been registration. Part of me just, I like seeing people come in. I just, saying hi, I recognize people, and just, there's a part of that I really enjoy. Next year, I'm going to be at the game library. That's going to be my normal parking spot. Not that it went bad last year, but we had some opportunities in that space, and they also were undermanned some. And again, we didn't know about it until it's kind of too late. So I'm going to add my body there. And I'm pretty much there all day. Like I very rarely do anything else. So I'm going to be there pretty much open to close all 3 days to help support that area and the walkie-talkies. So I think that will be a benefit. And if we do end up growing enough that we can justify adding a room in and having A and B, we wouldn't necessarily need to fill that every space with tables. So if anything, we would actually be able to spread our tables even further apart. Now we'd add some tables, but we would actually add a little space to all the ones that are already in there rather than the same spacing. I mean, I think spacing is pretty good. A couple extra feet in every direction would be better, I think. So that's kind of the goal, is if we can hit our goal target goal this year for attendees, next year we'll get A and B, add the vendors on the outside ring. Hopefully that would offset the cost, and then just spread the tables out a little bit more, add, like maybe a third more tables rather than twice or half as many again tables type of a thing.
It's very cool.
But I'm always open to suggestions. Oh, food trucks. That's the big thing. Oh my God, I can't believe I almost forgot that. People hate the food. They've consistently every year, it's the number one complaint, which part of me feels good because it's not there's nothing I can do about that, but I also hate it because there's nothing I can do about that. And people constantly complain. This year, the DCC has changed the rules. We are allowed to invite food trucks to come over that weekend and be there for our attendees. There is a cost involved, but I'm going to charge the food trucks for that, so it should just break even for me. But yeah, I'm very excited about the possibility of having 1 or 2 food trucks there on all 3 days. Because again, across the board, I'm not exaggerating, the number one complaint every year is food. It's either the cost, the quality, the hours that they're available or not available. So being able to offer food trucks should solve like 50% of every complaint we got last year, is if we had food trucks. Now, the food truck may be bad. I don't know. Maybe they'll give people food poisoning. I can't say that. But right now, going into it, I think food trucks solve so many problems. I'm very excited about it.
Excellent. And yeah, I do freely admit, if you are committing to, if you're crazy like us and you're trying to do like 3-4 hour RPGs in a day, finding that time to like go outside of the venue to get food is very, very difficult. So, you kind of do need either food at the venue or something, like running just outside onto the street to a food truck. That's fine. I don't really count that as like off venue,
right?
Food. So that will definitely help, because I'm kind of bad at remembering to eat at cons because you don't need to. So.
Which is fine, but like it does mean that sometimes we just forget that you need to eat. It's a very big problem.
Yeah, if I'm not eating, why should you have to eat? But yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. And again, the DCC, I love that venue and I hate that venue. It's like this weird relationship that we're in, because there's some things they do that are just so like customer friendly and just like kind in ways. And there are other ways that are like, nope, that's a rule we cannot break. And I'm like, what? Like, for example, there's been many times, last year was another time, where we rent the rooms on the second floor and third floor by the day, and they don't always get used. So sometimes I'll say, hey, we're not going to rent the rooms on the second floor for Sunday because they're very rarely anything up there. Again, it saves us a little bit of money on the contract. And then last year we had someone kind of late go, hey, can I run an event up there on Sunday? I was like, well, it's going to cost like $500 to rent that room for another day. And I went to the DCC and I was asking, they're like, don't worry about it. Just, you can use it. Just, keep it clean. So they basically just gave me like $500. I didn't have to pay them. And then another time we had a vendor, the people who do the charity raffle for us now, they plugged something in just to an outlet on the wall. They counted that as an electrical drop, and I had to pay them an additional $135 for using, like, they didn't drop an outlet, but the fact they plugged into a electrical outlet on the wall. Why is that extra? Like, if I charge my phone, would they have to, like, I don't understand if it was because it was a vendor, but I'm just like some things they do are just great. And the other thing is like, I don't understand who made that decision, and it's crazy. So yeah,
we've been there a lot with venues generally. I think a very big problem we tend to run into with them generally is, for most event spaces, primarily what they actually run, when you think about it, are weddings and like corporate cons where it's mostly people talking about business. So when you're having to do unique events, sometimes they don't really understand what's going on well enough to know what is a reasonable accommodation and what isn't a reasonable accommodation, and the rules just don't work the way that they would for other types of events.
I definitely agree with you, because it's been generally the same people almost every year. There's been a little bit of turnover, but for the most part, I've dealt with the same people. And that first year, they had no idea what we were talking about. Like it made it, because I've been to a couple of conventions, like it's a gaming con. We just need round tables and people there and they play games. And you could tell it wasn't until we physically showed up, they're like, oh. And I still get people every year who are like, oh, you're having a con. And they assume it's like a business con where I'm trying to sell like power tools or something. And I get all these unsolicited emails like, we will do this for you. We'll do this for you. And like, you don't know what we're doing. why are you offering me this? So it's 100%. I think they're even though gaming cons, I think they're in the zeitgeist. For the people who run these types of conventions, I still think it's a very small percentage of their business that they don't really know what we're doing unless they actually show up and see it. So I agree with you. It's along with way of saying you're right.
Yeah, you do especially tend to see that anytime a convention moves from one venue to another. There's a lot of stuff that they took for granted at their previous venue that they now have to re-explain. So that is one of the advantages of having that consistent space and staying there for the extended period of time. Because at this point, there's probably a lot of stuff that they just kind of know you're going to need that you don't have to explicitly spell out for them.
Except chairs. Yeah, that was one I thought would be obvious, but it wasn't. But anyway,
But the thing is, if you were doing, say, a Warhammer tournament, on those tables, generally speaking, you're going to be moving around the table so much to get at the various miniatures. Chairs just get in the way.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I think we talked about moving venues a couple times, and we still consider it. Like, it's a conversation that I guess I should have said earlier, but one of the things we do talk about every year is, do we want to look at other venues? And we have investigated some other venues, but there's still just one where I kind of feel like Dayton's our home, and I would not want to leave there unless it was an exceptionally good value to do so. The hotel situation in Dayton is not great. That's why we keep going to the hotel that we go to, even though it's not the one that's attached, because that one just reopened, and there's others closer, but the cost of the hotel we use is so much cheaper than the ones that are within walking distance. So there are some, pluses and minuses, pros and cons about moving, but everywhere we've looked at moving, it's either the same cost or often it's more. And then we have to start over with, this is what we're doing. And I just feel like there's so much extra work that would be involved. It would have to be significantly cheaper to go there. And so far, we've not found a place yet that made sense to me. So I think we'll just stay in Dayton. But again.
Yeah, as an attendee, like, we go to a lot of venues. Dayton tends to be more user-friendly than most. I like that they have the covered parking garage from the garage you're supposed to park in. I like that parking's not that expensive. Yeah. Those tend to be really big things that tend to get high on our list of venue complaints. And generally the staff there is pretty nice and not obtrusive. We've dealt with ones that are way more obtrusive than the Dayton Convention Center ones are.
Yeah, we really admit one of the things we have to budget for at Gen Con is 4 days of parking at that venue. Oh my God.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah. We have there's anywhere between 6 and 10 of us that go to Gen Con, and we just pile in one room, say assholes to elbows on the floor. And so then also with the cars, we bring 2 cars. It's $300 a car, but we just roll that into what everybody has to pay, whether they brought a car or not. But yeah, it is, even Origins is pretty expensive. I think it's up to $20 a day now if you park in the underground garage, and 10 or 12 if you park a block away.
5 if you want to park in the connected parking lots.
It used to be $12, and that was 2 years ago. Not that we've been tracking it.
Yeah. Well, this year I'm going to Origins, but I'm not staying at the hotel. I'm staying at a friend's house, and I'll be driving, and so I have to. I'm not going to pay for a hotel, so I'm still coming out way ahead, but I'm going to have to pay for parking. But unless it's pouring the rain, I'm just going to park in the one that's a block and a half away and walk over.
Yeah, because we do Origins, driving back and forth from home con, because it's about an hour away.
Which is not smart, by the way, given how long we're there. We are there from 8 a.m. to 12 midnight some days.
But it still ends up working out, cheaper than getting a place actually in Columbus. And we do have a friend who's coming to stay with us for that, who'll be driving back and forth with us. So,
although we do have a friend that's offered us a couch, which you might take them up on.
I mean,
we'll see how we end up working it out. But.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of couch surfing for cons if you can, just because they're so expensive. Anywhere that you can cut costs, I'm all for. And then just be a good guest. Bring your bottle of wine or buy them food or something. Do something nice for them helping you out as best you can.
I will say another very big benefit, and we do say this a lot about cons that are a little bit smaller and closer in the 1,000-person range, is they're generally less stressful, and generally the thing that I like about them is it is a lot easier for me to get into games that I want to play in. I think last year at Acadecon I got into all but one game, and that's perfectly fine, whereas at Gen Con or Origins, it's very random where you're even going to be in the ticketing scrum system, and if you're low in the list of priority, which is just a random thing, you could not get any of the games you want. Which is why smaller cons are cool.
Gen Con does that to me every year. It's like we all click the button at the same time because we're all in like Discord with each other. And it's like, I got 7, I got 4 million. So I guess I get nothing. So yeah, it is plus or minus. But there's one of the things about Acadecon that I probably need to do more research, and I just don't, is which events don't happen because not enough people are interested. Because I know that's going to happen. Like, again, we're more of an indie scene convention. Like we have D&D, we have Pathfinder, Organized Play, and Starfinder, but most of our events are not D&D or Pathfinder. Like I think that's kind of an odd thing for a con our size, but we try to encourage that. But there are still some games that just don't get as many players. I probably should start tracking like, oh, that one didn't go, and like trying to figure out which types of events would see more love. But it's like a flea market mentality for me. I kind of want there to be a bunch of stuff, even if most of it doesn't sell, because I think there's something about having that variety. Because then, you may not get anything that you want. So you pick something you didn't know, and then that becomes your favorite thing ever, or you really like that thing. So I don't want to be like, oh, we have to have 4 D&D and 2 Starfinder and no more. It's like, meh. So probably just isn't worth doing the work either, but it's also extra work, and I'm lazy.
Yeah, I would like to compliment your attendees on liking weird stuff, though, because I've run a goose-based RPG, a soap opera RPG. What do I think about else? Princess RPG. All of those tables have filled. So,
yeah, again, that's what, honestly, I think that's kind of what we're known for in a way. Like people know that they're going to get an experience with us that you can't necessarily get at some of the other cons, or maybe you can, just it's a little bit buried in the Pathfinder, Starfinder, D&D glut. So yeah, I love the fact that we are an indie RPG. I wish I could leverage that more and get more support from those smaller RPG companies. But again, we only have 1,000 people. It's their marketing money type of a thing.
well, the way I always look at it is I can play D&D pretty much anytime I want. It's not hard for me to find a D&D game, but it is hard for me to find the more unique systems. So that's more of what I tend to look for at cons. And sometimes that works out. Sometimes it's stuff like Roll Masters, which is what we wanted playing at Gen Con accidentally. That was a weird trip. Like, I get the people who love it. It's just not for me. Because if you have to use spreadsheets to calculate stuff,
yeah. That's me. When I go to a game that I don't like, I'm like, I'm glad this exists for you, because I can tell that you love this. This is not what I signed up for. My most recent event, have you ever played a Sparks game? It's the organized Star Wars.
I've heard of it, but I haven't played it.
I had a really bad experience. The people were all lovely. I have no problem at all with the people that were playing, but that is not ever a type of game that I would need to play again. It's just, it's a living campaign. So you have people that have been playing for years, have a very high level character mixed with people who just started, who you got like a starter character, and there's not no balancing there. So it's like, I'm firing my laser pistol 2d6. I'm firing my laser pistol 12d6. Obviously you're going to be successful and I'm not. So it's just, I don't know, just that's not the type of game I'm into. So not to badmouth Spark, again, lovely people, just not something I'm interested in playing.
So, you have something?
I was just going to say, that is the advantage of, as we were mentioning earlier, like having a lot of clear description about what kind of game you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, one of the things I'm going to be running at Origins is a Rogue Trader one-shot where everybody's a fairly high-level character, because I built them that way to make them lore accurate, not necessarily for practical gameplay purposes, and I've warned everybody, it's moderately complicated. I've prepped all the character sheets, I'm providing like cheat sheets of what all the abilities do, but I've also built a spreadsheet to do the damage calculations because it'll make things faster.
Right, yep. And again, as long as people know that, either they're signing up for what they want or they can't really complain when they get there and it's not what they thought because you told them what to expect.
So, kind of a related question. Let's say it's somebody's first time at Acadecon, or maybe even it's their first convention ever. What would be your advice to them? First time going to a convention, it's Acadecon.
Okay, so a lot of our events, we try to actually label the title Learn to Play. So if it's like D&D, it'll say Learn to Play in there so that you know if that's a game for you if you don't know what you're looking for. We also try to get all the descriptions should include new player friendly, 3gens provided, anything like that to make it easy for them to know what to sign up for. Outside of those things, looking for games that are aimed for people who are newer is just try stuff. Like you're going to a convention to play games, just whatever's open. Hit the game library and try an old favorite or ask one of us for a recommendation. Play a play to win. Even if you don't care if you win it, we usually have games in play to win that aren't in the game library. So it's like, this is a game that's probably new or newer. Try that, see what you think, and leave time for socializing, for, mental rest, like just, have some quiet time. Do hydrate, comfortable shoes, even though there's not a lot of walking for us, and try to get some food. Again, the things that you guys don't necessarily do that much. But yeah, food, water, comfortable shoes, open mind. If you go there trying to have fun, it's going to be hard for you not to. And then again, we are small enough. Sometimes I use the term boutique. I get made fun of sometimes, but we are still small enough to be a bit of a boutique experience. So just come up and ask, like say, hey, I've never played an RPG. I'm gonna say, well, what kind of things are you interested in? Like, are you a Star Wars fan? Are you a Firefly fan? Are you a Harry Potter fan? If you give me some ideas of the things that you're into, I can probably steer you to a game that's going to closely align with those and find one specifically for your level of experience. So don't be afraid to ask us, faculty, for advice, because that's literally what we're there for. We will happily find you a game, or we might, it's happened before, we might just run one for you. Like I've had someone like, I don't know what to do, and people at registration will be like, I'll run a game, and then, sometimes we'll pull them in registration. They'll just play back there with us, playing like a board game or something back there, because we want everyone to have a wonderful time, and we will absolutely do what we can in legal means to make sure you do.
It's one of my favorite things about tabletop conventions generally is just all the human connections, because at bigger cons or comic cons like that, you're not really getting to know like other people there to the same extent you are at RPG cons. But RPG cons, you can like make friends, you can go to tables, you can hang out with people, and I really love that as an experience.
Yeah, we've had the thing before where, well, we've run a game, and then somebody said, I really enjoyed that. Are you running anything else this con? I'm like, we're also running these things. I'm like, are there any tickets left? I'm like,
yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
There aren't any more.
Exactly. I have Gen Con friends. I don't even know some of their names, but just like as I'm walking the halls of Gen Con, I'm like, hey, I played a game with you. Origins, because it is a little bit smaller, I literally have Origin friends. Like I see them every time I go to Origins. One thing about Origins RPGs, which you probably know, your listeners may not, is it's fairly self-contained in the RPG space. It's generally the bottom of the Hyatt. There's like 2 floors of various conference rooms. So you are seeing the same people, even if you're not in the same game or the same room, you're going to see them in the hallways. You're going to see them at the food court. So every year I'm like, hey, how you doing? And just that interaction. I'm shamelessly plugging Acadecon the entire time I'm there. So some people know me as the Acadecon guy. They're like, hey, it's the Acadecon guy. I'm like, hey, I've already hit you. I don't have to talk to you this year. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so like, I love that we're making like those connections, and I have people, I'm like, I will absolutely try to find any game you're running, I will play in. Or I want to play with you. Like if I don't have something to do and I see you sitting down, I might just walk up like, hey, is there a spot open? Because I would love to play with this guy, this person. So yeah, I love that about Origins and Incon. Acadecon does that, but because we're smaller and we're mostly in one room, it's kind of intensified or, emulsified. I don't know what the right word is, because you're all together. It's like you're always looking at the same people. You don't have to see them in the hallway. You just look up and there's that person you played with yesterday. And, oh, there's the GM you're playing with later tonight. So I love that sort of intimacy of Acadecon. But also, we're getting bigger, we're growing, which is great, but there is a balance. I don't want to quite lose that. We're still mostly in one big room. I don't think we're ever going to have to necessarily, but maybe. But yeah, it's something I actually, again, we strive for that as well. So it's nice to hear that it's working.
Yeah, I would definitely say that it is. And again, like, there was a lovely moment at this year's Acadecon where I bumped into somebody I GM'd for the previous year.
And it's probably worth emphasizing, you thought this game went okay.
I thought it went fine.
You were a little bit questioning about it.
But yeah, they just were like, oh, you were the guy who ran that game last year. I had a really great time with that. We've been doing a lot more RPG stuff ever since. And I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. I had a bit of a deer in the headlights moment. Yep. I was like, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. I don't know how to handle this emotionally, but I'm very happy.
Again, in the moment, you're just like, awkward. But on reflection, that's wonderful. Like that's literally why people like me do these sort of things. Is we just love the hobby and we want to share that. And so every time we have a GM that runs a great game, the trickle down effect of that is you may have a whole new person starts playing games. They may eventually run games, and then it just sort of like spider webs out from there.
So what is it about games that you like? What draws you to RPGs more generally?
Oh man, that's a big question. The somewhat serious but also joking answer is I really love creatively solving a problem in an overly complicated way. So I love playing wizards. When I played Magic, I played blue. Neither one of those should be too shocking. So I like to try to find the most convoluted, complex answer to the question. And D&D and RPGs in general allow me to do that, where it's not just like hit it with the sword until it stops moving. Like that's the last option on my list. It's like we're gonna dress up like barmaids, and I'm just constantly trying to come up with the most convoluted solution to the problems, and I just absolutely love that. I do get a lot of joy just in general, like seeing other people have fun, which again, running cons pushes buttons for me too. So I didn't, set bump spike. I like pushing other people into the spotlight so that they get to have fun. Hopefully, again, if I read that they're anxious, I wouldn't do that. But if I see they're like, they want to have the moment, I'm going to try my best to make sure they're the one that gets that moment. And I just get joy in seeing other people have fun, particularly if it's a thing that I'm hosting. So like I'm hosting a game night and people are like, oh, I love this game I never played before. There's no better compliment for me or emotional state than someone saying that to me in the moment. So that's probably the biggest thing that I do. I'm a people pleaser, I guess, like personality type. So being in a situation where I get to see people having fun at something I'm a part of or leading, it's emotionally fulfilling for me. One of my favorite things to kind of express this. So early on in podcast, again, we were being somewhat successful. I went to Gen Con, and one of our listeners reached out and said, hey, I'm coming to Gen Con. I'm bringing my family. Would you play in a game with just me and my family? I'm like, sure. So we met a time. It was a dad. I think he had 3 sons. Like maybe 10 was the youngest, like 14 was the oldest. Excuse me. And we set up, and by happenstance, I picked like the bard character. I think they all seemed a little bit unsure, like they just weren't quite, as adept at role playing. And the whole scenario revolved around this big performance that we had to do to impress. I think it's like the nobility or something, right? So I kept making promises. Like, again, I was writing checks that I could not cash. And then the moment the performance was supposed to start, my character left. I just abandoned them. So all 3 of them had to be the ones that actually did the performance, even though I was the bard. And then I came in at the end and was like, oh, guys, you did great. So again, I had so much fun seeing them because it was their dad running. So it wasn't like it was a table full of strangers. I was the only one that was a stranger. And I just put all 3 of them on, and they did wonderful. They did absolutely amazing. It was so much fun. The one part that, again, is funny, but also kind of weird. I kept saying that we were going to do a ska performance. And this was me kind of being an a-hole. One of the kids actually was into ska and wrote a ska at the table. And I thought I was being like this funny jerk picking this, obtuse art form. And he was like, oh, I'm into that. It was amazing. So it sort of serendipitously worked out because I don't think he read how much of a jerk I was trying to be. But yeah, I will never forget that moment. And that's exactly who I am as a person. I want you to have fun, and I will have fun through you.
Yeah, that's all. I will admit, I know you champion this a lot about keeping games to the extent that it's possible all ages, which I also really love and adore. I've had tables where I've had like 6-year-olds and 6-year-olds playing together, and being able to GM that is intimidating, but when it works, it's just amazing to watch people who are just at completely different stages of life be able to work together to solve these kind of complex problems, and seeing them both kind of come alive in their own way is awesome.
Yeah, just mixing people together, I think, is wonderful. I do get there are certain games that I probably wouldn't want kids at. Like I generally don't run those types of games, but occasionally I do. But I get frustrated. Like even at Origins, I was going through the list today, and most of the games I found that I was really excited were 18 and older, and I'm bringing both my kids with me this time. I was like, well, that's out, because I want to play together. So I think there should be a very healthy mix of kid specific, adult specific, but most of them should be all ages, or maybe even teen and above, because I can run it for little kids. Can be, that's a whole other ballgame, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I just think most games should be available to most people in general, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think people tend to also underestimate how good kids are generally at them. Like most kids who are at a role-playing con are going to be playing role-playing games already at home. Like their parents not just gonna throw them in there.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Also, they'll always come up with the best solutions. Like every time I've had a child under 12 at the table, their solutions are just completely chaotic, and the group just goes with it, and it makes the entire game.
And I think that's one of my favorite things, because I have been seeing that from a GM and from a player, where there are some older players And they do the same thing when the kid comes up with something. They're like, nope, that's the plan now. We're going to make that work, even if it's a terrible plan, but it could be a fun plan. I love that the older players often, most of the time, will just be like, this is now what we're doing. Everything else doesn't matter. This is it. And just makes that game so much fun. The last Acadecon, one of my friends who was part of the podcast years before, and then life got in the way, got married, had a kid, got a new job. He kind of stepped out of the RPG podcast for a long time. He'd come back to Acadecon. I think he had been there in like 8 or 9 years. And he brought his oldest son, and we kind of had that situation where he wanted to play D&D. He got into a D&D game with his dad. All the other players were older, and they're like, nope, this kid is the star of the show. And by the time that game was over, his kid's like, we have to do this again, Dad, that type of thing. And Nick came up, he's like, I can't tell you how much fun I just had. My kid loved this. Thank you so much for bringing this. I mean, it's just everything you just said condensed into one moment for me. And again, that's why I do this. It's not to make money, though I won't be upset if I can, but that's not why we do it. It's do it for those moments and just sharing this hobby that I love so much.
It's awesome. I also wish we had a camera on you. Do you need me to give her a dog? Sorry, I didn't mean to take away from your awesome moment. But we also have a dog that's...
Emma has decided it's time to lick my face. She does.
Yeah, I see that. Yep, nope.
But basically, it's a case of it's getting close to the time at which she gets fed, and this is how she indicates that she wants her food. She's not getting it for another half hour, but she's going to keep trying.
I have 2 cats and a dog, and I get woken up every morning by my cat, like just the biggest a-hole in the world wanting fed. It's kind of annoying, but I get it.
So what are some of your favorite RPG systems, if you have any right now?
Oh, so I do like 5th edition. I know that's the basic answer, but I think 5th edition is the best edition of D&D I've ever played, and I've pretty much played all of them, except for like D&D. I think it combines all the things that I love and kicks out a lot of the stuff I didn't. So big fan of that. I really like Savage Worlds. Been playing that off and on for many years, and I don't know if I've ever had a bad time. Like I've had bad times with D&D, but I don't know if I've ever had a bad time with Savage Worlds. Just recently went on a cruise with some RPG Academy faculty friends. We went as like all of our couples, but my kids also went, and I ran a 3-shot of Deadlands on the cruise. So we kind of did our own like D&D cruise thing. Had a lot of fun with Deadlands. Dragonbane is one that I've played 2 or 3 times. I've really liked that system quite a lot. And then see what else is going on. I'm interested in Draw Steel. I don't know if I'm going to like it because it seems to be a little bit more tactical than I generally like, but there's some elements to it that seem appealing, like I'm hearing things. So I'm going to try to sign up for a Draw Steel at Origins or Gen Con. Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm hardcore into those books, and there's a new DCC game going to come out at Gen Con, so I'm probably going to check that out. And then I'm a big superhero junkie. Like superheroes is like, there we go. Is like I've been listening. I'm actually re-listening to all the audiobooks up until the release of the new one. I'm on Butcher's Masquerade currently.
I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm currently on Gate of the Feral Gods.
All right. So, yep, I'm just a little bit ahead of you. But superheroes is like my second favorite genre of RPGs behind like high fantasy D&D sort of stuff. So I'm always looking for superhero RPGs to try or to revisit. So like Marvel, the old Marvel Face Rip version, which I still love a lot, even though it's not a good game, it's a lot of fun. The new Marvel game I've been having fun with. There's a new Invincible RPG coming out from Free League, which I love Free League and I really love Invincible. So I backed that one in Kickstarter. But my short answer is whatever game I'm playing at the time is my favorite game, because I'm going to try my absolute best to just enjoy that moment, kind of live in that moment. But I don't really like Pathfinder. I kind of avoid those. I don't really like Starfinder because it's basically Pathfinder in space. Shadow Dark, I know people love it. I played it. I didn't get it. It was okay, but there was nothing about it that I thought was like revolutionary beyond just like regular 5th edition. Not to be like negative, but that's one that's like everyone I know talks about it. I'm like, I don't get it. So that is mostly whatever I'm playing. I'm going to try my best to make that the most fun. But Savage Worlds is high on the list. D&D 5th edition is high on the list. And then basically any superhero game that I get to try new is on high on the list.
That's awesome. And yeah, I share very similar thoughts generally. I do think that 5th edition is, although I haven't tried 2024 edition yet, just because I haven't had time to learn it, but
it's
I hear
the same
it's good.
game with just a little tweaks. It does make some things a little bit better. It probably break some things, but I'm never going to, like, I don't care about trying to break things, so it's not going to matter to me. So it's basically the same game with like a couple small twists.
Yeah, I freely admit come up with an idea for what I think will be an interesting, whether it's a campaign or a one shot, and then I figure out what system I think would be the best to run it in. Like, again, I literally came up with a really stupid idea recently that just, for whatever reason, I ended up, I think it just got recommended on YouTube, the classic terrible song, I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper.
Mm.
And I'm like, this is so goofy, it would actually make for a really fun, stupid one-shot. What system would work?
I mean, there is a Starship Trooper system. I don't know if it's any good.
Yeah, well, again, the entire point of this is it's meant to be the goofiest possible thing, so I'm using Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
Okay. Not played that.
Because,
that's on my list to get to, but yeah, I've heard good things.
Yeah, we played it last year at Origins, I think.
We've mentioned this in our Origins episodes. It's they have a gamers room at both Origins and Gen Con's gay GAY that's LGBTQ plus games, and they're always a very fun group to play with too. Mm-hmm. We've done a lot of their stuff, and I'm running Thirsty Swords Lesbians this year at Origins, which already has people wanting tickets, so we'll see how that ticket scrum goes. I might have to run an illegitimate second game.
Yeah, that's what Sunday at Origins is for.
Yep.
Yeah, off book.
It always ends up getting kind of loosey-goosey, just because, especially if you're somebody who's relatively local to Columbus, and you don't need to get in a plane back to wherever you live in time to get to work on Monday. You do tend to find there's people hanging around at the tail end of Origins who just are simultaneously very, very tired, but are also still riding the high and still want to keep doing stuff. So you can frequently get a pickup game somewhere like that.
I'm somewhat lucky now. I work at a school and I have the summers off. So both Origins and Gen Con falls where I don't have to work unless I just want to pick up an extra shift. So I get to take the Monday after off. Usually at Acadecon, I take the Monday after off. This last year, I wasn't able to do that. And that was a bad decision on my part. So we're hoping this year I will have the vacation time so I can just not go in on Monday because, it's so much.
Yeah, this probably isn't an issue for you too much. I imagine for most games at Acadecon, you just say yes. You ever think it's ever going to get to a point where you have to decide which games get on the schedule?
There may come a time, but there's been a few times where I've pushed back about the material. Sometimes if it's something where I think it either should be an adult only game, like the way it's described, or I think it should be in a private room because of the subject matter. I'm fine with it being on the schedule for the most part, unless it's something awful. But just adult themes, drug use, there's going to be, play D&D, things die, right? But if there's something about the description that makes me feel like I don't want this next to a game of My Little Pony RPG, though those people also sometimes can do the weird stuff, I will ask them can I put this in a private room? I don't think this should be in the main game room or move it to a different time type of thing. But I don't know if I've ever actually just said no to a game, and this might be the year. I know there are some systems out there. Is it called Fatal? It's almost like it was a bad joke made to see how many people they could offend or something. No one's ever tried to submit something like that, but I would push back about that because we are still a family event. I want kids to be able to come to our event. With vendors, I've asked, if you have anything that would be adult or risque, you can sell it, but it can't be on public display. If you want to have a behind the counter or something like that, that's fine. But I don't want just a 5-year-old walking around going, "What's that?" And there's giant dick or something carved into wood. That type of thing.
Yeah, I also meant more in terms of the thing I'm just thinking about for bigger cons. I find that both Origins and Gen Con, and this isn't a criticism, I understand why Pathfinder and Starfinder are so popular because they have those societies, but it seems like they tend to have a lot of games and take up a lot of space, and in my experience only about half of those games fill. It almost feels like they're taking away space from other stuff that could be there, although I don't run those cons and don't know.
There is a balancing act there in Pathfinder specifically. So I have a gentleman who's been running the organized Pathfinder for us pretty much from the beginning. This wonderful guy, just absolutely lovely to work with. And it does bring people in. There are people who go to convention because they want to play Pathfinder, they want to get the next level, or they want the add-on, whatever. So not offering Pathfinder is it would be a hard decision to start a con and not have that if you want it to be successful. to a level. It's kind of like open a game store and not selling magic cards. Like, okay, see how that works out. But one of the things that we do is I have a set number of tables that I give them, and then those are their tables all weekend, and they can kind of do whatever they want within that table space. And it's it's a healthy. I think it's like 5 tables plus like a headquarters table. So it's still pretty big, a lot of tables, but it's not going to go beyond that unless I see that they are consistently filling up every table, and they don't. Like they probably have 60 to 70% firing rate. I think it's what they call it, fire rate, when it actually the game goes. But if they got like 80 or 90, then I probably would give them an additional table and give them an additional badge, because I supplied it. In years past, it's been like a half thing, but this year we're actually going to comp their badges because they do bring people into the convention. But that is one of the things this year specifically that we are looking at, is being a little bit more selective with the games. And if I see there's too many of one system, I might ask someone. Again, I haven't yet, but I might say, hey, we've already got 5 D&D. Is there another system you would want to run, or move around the times type of a thing? So I don't know. There may be a time that happens, but I don't think we're there yet, because it also kind of balances itself out. As we grow, there's more people. So more people, D&D and Pathfinder are still the biggest games out there. So there probably will be people looking specifically for those games. So I guess my long, short answer would be, if I start to hear criticism on the feedback survey, like, hey, there was too many of this and not enough of that, I might look into it a little bit harder. It's something, it is in the back of my head, but I don't think it's actionable yet, or needs to be actionable yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I imagine it's also pretty self-selecting. Like if I ran a game at Acadecon and it didn't make, I probably wouldn't run that game next year because it's clearly not the right space for that game. So I imagine a lot of DMs will just do that.
Yeah, and that is something I have sent out in the past, because I can send like just to GMs through the newsletter function. I'll be like, hey, if you have a game that has got no players by this date, would you consider changing systems? Would you consider moving it? Or, I don't want them all to get canceled, because we have a lot of walk-ins. Like we have about a third of our people will show up just over that weekend walk-in. They need things to do. So I want there to be some games that don't have enough players yet, hoping they will fill up. But I do track that and go, hey, you haven't had anybody sign up this system. Would you mind switching around? So I guess it's more like a one-off thing than like a blanket sort of filtering system. But yeah, that does happen on occasion. And hopefully people want their games to fill up, I would assume. So
yeah, I do appreciate that too, because a lot of particularly the bigger cons, if you're showing up day of, particularly for an RPG fan, it's almost impossible to get it. Like Origins is almost 100% fill rate, and Gen Con's close to it too. Plus Gen Con, you have to sit in that massive line if you don't pre-book stuff.
Well, and then you might have to be 4 miles down the road. It's like, hey, there's a game open, but it's a taxi cab, ride to get there. So that's an issue. But yeah, we want to have things open for walk-ins type of a thing. But also, as a GM, kind of stinks if you're like, I need at least 4 to go. I've only got 2. And then what happens if no one else signs up? Then you got those 2 players who wanted to play, and then they don't get, so I get from the GM standpoint that it is a frustration. And again, it's someone with anxiety. I would be freaking out if I had that happen to me. But I think from a high level perspective, we need so many games with open seats for those walk-ins. So it's a balancing act. If I had a particular DM say, I don't want to do that, I would probably be like, okay, that makes sense. I'm not going to force you to do that. But if I have someone who's like, I'm willing to do that, then sure, let's keep it open and see what happens. And, I have those like reserve GMs. I may have a reserve player like, hey, Brad, do you want to go play this game that they need a player? I'm sure I could find someone that would do that.
Yeah, you and I have had that before, where we will, sometimes, pitch hit for each other in terms of, you need minimum 3 people to make this game run. You've only got 2. I will, I was theoretically meant to be doing this other game, but they've got a nearly full table. I will drop out of that and play in your game instead to make sure it runs. Like, we do that for each other occasionally.
We've done the inverse too, where if we had another person who was a walk up to the table and the table was full, because for us, 5 is generally what we set, and there's always a 6 kind of wiggle room spot that we'll probably provide if it's just one person. The one will just ask you not to play, or the other person not to play.
Yeah.
Also, speaking of, go ahead.
I was saying that makes sense to me. Again, obviously, as a couple, that makes sense for you too. But I just think, and I think I've done that as a player before. Like I've been in a game and someone walk up and my spot. Maybe it was a game that I wasn't super excited for, but it's filled a spot. I'd be like, I'll go have a lunch, that type of a thing. Because again, I just don't like big tables. So sometimes I've had people will get let into a game more than I thought was going to be. Probably not gonna be fun for me anyway. So, but anyway, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Yeah, we try to balance that too. Like generally it's just like one extra spot or something like that, unless it's a I probably shouldn't talk about that ticketing fiasco. That was not my fault though. Basically, they made it look like there were open seats to my game where there weren't. So basically, I had twice the amount of people at my table
Oh,
that I was supposed to because I had done the walk-on stuff that I was supposed to because all the walk-ons showed up before the people who actually had tickets when they said I had tickets. So I had 12 people at my table, which was
no.
I'm not going to say what con that was.
Okay. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen again. Or maybe it was a lovely time. You might have had 12 great people with great experiences.
I did my best. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, at Gen Con, it's also interesting just the walking back and forth to games generally, like you were talking about. Because keep in mind, you've seen how I dress at cons, so I'm pretty much
Yes.
always in a giant ball gown because I'm stubborn. You tried to talk me out of that at Gen Con, I didn't listen.
She did not.
Which leads to two problems. One of which is because kids at Gen Con obviously want to take pictures with you, which is cute. They want to do
Yes.
that at Acadecon too. But at Gen Con, it leads to me having to literally grab the children to make sure they're not trampled while they're getting the picture taken.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so...
Oh, it
like,
is.
people just will not stop.
Again, the worst moment we had was just we had a game that was right next to the vendors hall, and it ended right when the vendors hall opened, and we had to be in one of the hotels, over by the A halls straight after that for another game. So 20,000, 30,000 people trying to get into the vendors hall going this way, and us trying to go the other way. And she was in a ball gown with a train.
Yeah. Again, I love Gen Con. It changed my life. But man, I wish they had like an elevated people mover track, something, teleporters, because it is just, and again, if anyone listening, if you've never gone to Gen Con, if you go, there are two Marriotts. One's called the JW, one's called the Marriott. Don't go to the wrong one because they are not close to each other. And I have done that.
Yeah, we were smart. We went to a smaller con earlier in the summer and walked around the entire venue to get a lay of it before we got there, which is... I honestly would recommend that if you just happen to be anywhere near Indianapolis, because you can go in for free when there's not a con on. Just walk around, get a sense of the space. It helps a lot.
Because there are some like cubby holes. Like there's like most things are in a game room or the hall, but occasionally you'll be like, this is room 212, which is on the second floor outside of Hall C. I guess I'll find that. I mean, it makes sense when you see it, but it can be confusing. And I know they put the maps out there, but I don't know. They don't necessarily, I have to physically be there. I can't look at a map and know what things look like. A lot of times I got to visualize it myself. But yeah, Gen Con's a lot. I love it, but it's a lot.
You have any questions yet?
No.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to say about Acadecon? Generally?
It's great. I know I like to say it's the terribly named but tremendously fun convention. So it is a great con for new folks or people who've been playing for a long time. We will absolutely go out of our way to make sure anyone who shows up has a good time. It does help us if you buy a badge early. Yes, you can walk in. We'll find something for you to do, but it makes our life easier if people sign up ahead of time. We have a costume contest. We have a very bountiful play to win program. We have a huge charity raffle. We are supporting Sanctuary at Homestead again this year. We also have a partnership with She, the Super Heroine Etc. organization, which is a sort of a woman-centric RPG-focused organization. They accept members and players from all genders, but they are specifically trying to like increase female representation in gaming. So they're going to be a featured partner with us this year, doing some cool stuff. And I'm also started another convention. It's called the Bluegrass Gaming Con. It's in Southeast Kentucky. It was in March this year. I think it'll be in March again next year, more than likely at the same place. Again, I think we had 107 people is what I counted this year. So very tiny, even considered, Acadecon standards. But it's the same thing that we did at Acadecon. We just did it at this other little place. So either of those cons that you'd like to come to. And then I am the coach of the Corbin High School Odyssey of the Mind team, if you're familiar with that organization. And two of my teams advanced to Worlds, and we are currently fundraising. And I will shamelessly ask for donations from anywhere. You can help my kids raise. We have 15 kids going. It's roughly $900 per kid to pay for all the transportation up there, food, lodging while we're there, and some like knickknacks, snacks, t-shirts for them to have while they're there to make it a cool experience. But yeah, we will take money from anyone because we need money to get the kids there. So any of those three things. And again, you can still find the RPG Academy as a YouTube channel. The podcast still exists. It's all on archive.org. But if you go to archive.org and search RPG Academy, all of our old podcasts are there. They're still listenable too. But the website's pretty much, I think at this point, it just redirects to a new website that's YouTube focused. But yeah, reach out. I'm happily, as you can tell, spent almost 2 hours talking to these two lovely people. I'll talk to you as well. Reach out, email, phone call, whatever. Not a phone call, but email me or reach out on social media, and I'll happily talk to you about anything.
Thank you so much for this, Mike. This was an amazing interview. You're clearly somebody who's experienced being interviews. As an instructor, I ask people a lot of questions, so it's very nice to have somebody who's very good at answering questions. So thank you so much.
It's like when I interview other podcasters for my podcast, it's like you can tell when someone has had experience podcasting versus like pulling teeth. I overshare. I talk too much, but I think that's better than having to like pull your teeth to get people to say things. So yes, happy to be here. I love talking about games. The reason I do this, I love talking about games. I love sharing games. So any opportunity to do so, I'm happy to do. So thank you. And thank you for doing what you do. Again, you've been very lovely sharing positives about Acadecon, and it warms my heart. If you had criticisms, again, I'll happily listen to those too, but it makes me feel better when you share the positives.
It's one of our favorite conventions.
It really is. And we do try to be like as positive as possible. You know, as we say, anytime we criticize, we are doing it with love.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, as I facilitate classes and I say positive feedback makes me feel better, critical feedback will make me better. So how about a little bit of both?
Exactly.
So we'll drop all of Mike's stuff in the show notes. So anything you want to plug, just put it there, send us links, and we'll put that on our YouTube page and link stuff. You do all the linking. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Also, our dog can tell when we're about to get off things. She picked this up during the pandemic from me because she saw the tone I took when I was about to get off voice sculpt. So yeah. Not the most dignified.
The second she realizes that it's about to be Emma time, that she gets very excited.
Well, thank you again, Mike.
Oh, again, absolutely lovely to be here. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again. I'll probably see you at Origins. I'll probably Gen Con, maybe not, because there's so many people we may not see each other there. But I'm sure at Origins we will cross paths, and then at Acadecon, and then maybe at Bluegrass Con next year. It's super tiny, but if you're willing to drive to Southeast Kentucky.
I'm absolutely
willing.
I'm just immediately yes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry, Richard. Sorry.
It's fine. I'm trying to finagle like changes in my job so I can get more time. You know, like more like work from home time to actually make some of the travel stuff slightly more viable. But anyway.
Yeah, being a college professor in my 20s sucked a lot, but like now I get to set my own hours, which is the most awesome thing ever.
The good thing about where I live now is that it's really cheap to live. Like that's the thing. The hotels will be very cheap. Food will be cheaper compared to other places. But there's also downsides. It's in the middle of Southeast Kentucky. So, yeah.
Living in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, we get that.
Yeah, probably similar vibes, honestly. But yeah. I need to jump off here. Thank you again. I will drop those links in the Discord at some point. Yep. When will this go out? Because I also want to make sure we share it.
Monday.
Okay, yes, then I will drop the links now. Let me know if you do end up needing my audio. I can share that with you over Google or something like that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So
Thank you
Craig
both.
works. Bye.
Bye.
There's the